Our goal here is to moderate any discussions you want to talk about and not for us to just be the ones talking. So does anybody have something that they want to talk about in regards to information and data, management from a professional perspective? Don't be that shy. Come on, you're all cool kids, and I know half of you guys are not shy folks.
I'm a Sanford employee, and we are just implemented our OMOP model. So I'm very, very, very green. I would say that I know OHDSI and OMOP in a very basic level. I know what it is for. I know some technical stuff, but very little in the technical sense. I'm learning every day. So my question would be like, uh, from a beginner point of view, what kind of steps can I make? Can I take precautions to avoid some common mistakes into that organizations that are beginning to implement home op? Usually the pits they fall into, well, how to avoid them, how to prepare for them.
Cool. Anyone want to take a stab at it? I know we have lots of folks on here who knows lots about this and lots of organization who's done this. I see J&J, I see Afir, I see, Hive, I see lots of different folks in here, even University of Colorado. Anyone want to take a stab? See, my instructions were to not talk a lot. Those are my specific instructions that were given to me, to only moderate and keep my mouth shut after that, which is very hard for me to do.
Who are you and what have you done with Mui?
So this is Priya. I'm happy to take a stab. So I represent Stanford, and we converted our data into OMOP late 2019. It's been a learning process, but I think we are really, really happy that we did. We, I think, are doing things a little bit differently than many of the other institutes, but I'm just going to say what we've done. We actually adopted BigQuery as our backend. So what we've done is effectively, and our raw data source is Clarity, Epic is Epic, so Epic Clarity. We've actually transferred, we have a copy of Clarity in BigQuery, and then we run our entire OMOP ETL pipeline on Google Cloud. And our final data set is also available on BigQuery. And now we've also been able to run, Atlas as our cohort, and the GUI tool with the BigQuery backend. So this is just really very broadly, very briefly. It's a little bit different. I know there aren't too many institutes that are running and have BigQuery as their backend. So we had a lot of issues, but I think we've solved most of them, and we absolutely love the performance of BigQuery and love the performance of just being on the cloud and doing everything on the cloud and being able to scale. We've also been able to, basically our notes are also in our CDM, and we've run the note NLP. We have run the annotation pipeline, so we have populated our node NLP table too, and it's all available pre-IRB for our users.
Just some comment. I do have some experience with Google Cloud, but Sanford opted for Amazon AWS, which I'm not familiar with.
No, Stanford did not opt for AWS. Stanford is doing everything on Google Cloud.
Yes. So yeah, I wish it was the case because I do have some experience on Google Cloud previously.
Okay.
But Sanford, because they are partnering with, I don't know if it's because of the partner institution that they chose to implement the model, or if it was our IT choice. When I hop into the project, the decision was already made for AWS, but just this on a personal level, because then I have to learn more about AWS, and I already knew quite a bit about Google Cloud, but that's besides the points. I'm more interesting about, you said you have notes on Google Cloud. You mean like doctor notes, like the whole shebangs?
All the clinical notes, yes. All the clinical notes are available in the notes table of OMOP.
how you guys made some kind of an anonymization that, de-identification on that?
Yes, we have a de-identification pipeline that we've called TIDE that we're in the process of trying to push into open source. But I'm happy to talk to you offline about that more detail. So we're happy to share that. That code is, we're in the process of trying to push that out, open source, and so that it runs completely independently as an independent Docker container.
Right. So last question. This pipeline was like a machine learning pipeline, an AI pipeline, which was an automated process, or the guys took it like manually and reviewed those numbers?
No. So we've adopted the common workflow language, and we've actually all the ETLs, so the basic SQL queries that do the transformations. Instead of using Postgres or any of the other databases, we're actually just doing all of that on BigQuery itself. And our pipelines runs pretty fast, and we found that it's pretty efficient and inexpensive. The notes do cost money. Anonymizing the notes do cost money, but right now, our dean's office is funding it.
But so how do you de-anonymize? I mean, are you just taking out your MRN or whatever? I mean,
so
there's a lot of stuff that can be dumped in notes.
Yes, there is a lot of stuff. I can refer you to our paper. We actually do have a pipeline. We call it TIDE, which is text de-identification. And we run it through that pipeline. So we do a couple of things. I mean, there are a couple of other talks I can refer you to that Jose Posada, who actually really led that, has given in this in the OHDSI. I think he gave it at the symposium last year too. A talk. Essentially, the couple of things that we do is we use our basic, core NLP to do our nerve recognition. We have a database with all our PHI data, so those are. So we do a little bit more than just safe harbor. We've adopted the algorithm, which is hiding in plain sight. And so what we do is not only does the nerve just identify, what could be names, locations, and other PHI, which we already have a database for. So, right, so you can go in and actually find those elements, but we go in and replace it all with surrogates. So even if there is any incidental PHI, it's really hard to figure out what it is.
Oh, if you could post that into the chat, those links, I would be grateful.
I will do that. I will do that right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. I just wanted to clarify. I think I heard two different names. So Priya, you're Stanford. George, I think the name is. You're Sanford. So without a T, correct?
That's correct. Right.
Okay.
It's easily to mix the correct. We are in the Midwest. They are in the West Coast.
Okay. I thought I heard that, but I just wanted to make sure.
So let me post those links. Yep.
That's awesome. Anyone got any other topics they want to talk about, or any questions they may have for the whole group here? Anything you want to debate upon?
I want to come back to the original question by James. Thanks, Priya, for giving us some time to think about that question. What are the pitfalls when joining the OHDSI community? What we learned, I started thinking about, when I 5 years ago joined the OHDSI community, what were the main things to remember? And I think one is there's so much going on. Probably most you can think of you want to do, it has already been done. So reach out or find what has already done. Don't reinvent the wheel. And if it's not there, start developing it. Better sooner than later, and see if other people are willing to help. Because as you have seen already, the community is very active and always willing to help. Another thing is that things develop very quickly in OHDSI. So stay on top of the changes. Well, and these community calls are very important for that. And of course, again, the forums. So regarding data standards, yeah, what are the latest conventions, both on the data model and the vocabularies. Yeah, it's very important to keep track of that.
Thank you. Anyone else got any comment on that? I know I see members of the CDM vocabulary working group on here. Not calling anybody out.
Well, I would just say that it would be very, very useful to join working groups, as many of them as you can fit in. I mean, you do not have to be an expert in that to join the working groups. I'm involved in the data quality dashboard working groups, and I'm not an R programmer. I can't do any of that, but they're talking about, well, what should we be doing? And I can give a perspective on the ETL side of it, so, and I'm learning just a whole bunch of things while that's happening. So even if you join working groups just to sit there anonymously in the background, that's really, really helpful.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that. I had no idea. I had this notion that once you join a group, you're expected like to give back at least from time to time, and lurkers would be like frowned upon. Like, oh, hey, why you join if you're not actually contributing to the group, right?
Yeah, but you got to get up to speed.
Correct.
So listening is for me, has been a very important skill and has helped me immensely.
And I would say many of us in the work groups, we tend to forget what it's like to be new to the community. I think that's easy to say. And we forget what it's like, and we talk in acronyms, and we are like, oh, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it's really helpful to have different perspectives from folks that, are trying to come up to speed. And, my organization, we can run I think the last ETL we ran, including some Achilles and data quality dashboard work, we ran it in a day, and that was like our super milestone for us, but that's not the experience of everybody. And so having your perspective of being a newcomer, understanding what your hurdles are, helps us get better at what we're doing as a community.
I agree, especially, things like the CDM working group, right? We, Claire, we always talk about a lot of stuff in there, but it's always the same few folks who bring their point of views. But having new people in and maybe seeing the way that, we've modified the wiki page, maybe that's not as useful to new folks versus for us, we've looked at it for a year, right? So it's, to us, it's second nature now. But having new folks just come in and give us a different insight is always welcomed. Any working group.
Well, and I would say I've said some or asked some naive or incorrect questions in some of those groups and have been corrected. And I mean, very nicely. I mean, it hasn't been anything like that. But I had maybe an incorrect assumption, and that was very quickly corrected. And so I learned by that, but then I've also, in my ignorance, contributed things that that nobody else had thought about. So we all know stuff that nobody else in this group knows, and we all have experiences that nobody else here has had, and they can all contribute. So, and you can't keep me from talking anyway. So I'm kind of like Mui.
Well, we love you, Roger. Keep going.
Oh,
Yes.
well,
And
thanks.
I should say, I lurked for 4 or 5 years probably before I started regularly attending working group calls, and everyone still talks to me. So I wouldn't feel bad about lurking. You'll likely find some working groups more interesting than others, and that's okay.
And everybody has been entirely gracious in all of these groups. We're all volunteers, and nobody's higher up than anybody else. So.
Yeah, as actually a group that's relatively new, like we converted our data to OMAP a little less than 2 years ago, but it was Jose Posada from our team who's been like most active in OHDSI. A couple more of us have been joining more recently, and I would absolutely attest to that. It's amazingly gracious, and nobody ever makes you feel, I mean, everybody makes you feel really welcome and not like, oh my God, like, really, you don't even know this? So it's really been a really nice experience.
Hey, this is Raga. Hey, yes, hey, I work with St. Jude Children's Hospital. So one of my tasks is to get this OHDSI concept introduced, and then the IS to agree on. Maybe say when I took this job 6 months ago, so that's one of my responsibilities. So I think I got a presentation ready, but I every time I feel like it's quite not ready to go for a management talk. So is there any tips you can say, like obviously when initially it was given to me, they said, oh no, you and 2 other developers will start. And then when I read the OHDSI book, it says it takes a village. So what is a fine line to just jump in and get started? Is there any tips?
So you're looking for inspiration for slides to explain the OMOP CDM and other standards and use cases?
No, come again. No, I took the slides from the the OMOP website, mostly from Dr. George and a few others, as I from the tutorials and stuff. Sometimes so the older ones are a little bit more resonating with what we do. And then I was trying to focus on the oncology CDM, because being the huge cancer facility. But at the same time, we are in the middle of EHR conversion. So one is, if we wait too late, it's going to be again 2 more years before we get to the new HR, and then this will kind of go on hold again. So but again, like, I'm not super technically savvy, but I want them to appreciate that, okay, this is something we should. I think the main concern was around the security and then release of information outside, so which I recognize there is no data going out, but the other technology factors, I was thinking, if you say like, hey, if you want to go this a certain path, this is your minimum technical configuration you want to get started for this sizing of an organization or this size of records. Like that, if I were to have, right, like option A, option B, something like that will be like a little bit more easy for them to see. Because it seems like a little bit more abstract for the IS people when I gave a one-on-one conversation to see, like, why do we need to go through all this work for you to eventually come up with a new research question? We are doing things in silos the way we have been doing. We have our own reusable methodology or whatever. But I mean, there is enough interest in the leadership. Yeah, I'll take any inputs you have, how to get started, jump in.
Well, I mean, one thing that I've been pushing where I am is in this discussion we've been having in the data model and stuff is around promoting standards and things. And I agree, it's a tough political thing to get across, but it's one thing you can kind of, again, in my experience, leverage to try to get people started. There is that frustration around people go, well, can't we wait or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And, if we wait, nothing will ever happen. So that's kind of my take on it.
I posted in the chat because this just came up not recently from another group as well. But there was a forum post about reasons for OHDSI's OMOP CDM. And there's a whole conversation about the different reasons why you want to convert over to a CDM. maybe maybe one of the things we can ask the community, and I don't know who wants to help out with it, is coming up with a deck that takes all these points and turns it into a deck, right? Because there's a lot of great information if you look at that post in there that talks about why you should go over to a CDM. But that's a lot of reading for somebody to do. Maybe we can, as a group, come up with, maybe we can reach out to Erica. She's the one who's been posting the most on here, about creating a small little, business case deck that most people probably are looking for from a community point of view.
If I could pitch in, again, I'm super green, but I think I got the basic idea right. Everybody talks about big data and the new age, the benefits that this will bring, right? And I think that OHDSI and OMOP are two ways that materialize that. And of course, when you get out of the idea space, this Plato thing, right? This philosophical idea, and get down to the nitty gritty, it's always hard, right? It's not, sometimes not pretty. It costs money, it's confusing, but it's a lot of work. Like it's like this big bridge. Once this bridge is built, everybody like cheers up and say, "Oh, that's nice." They even forget about it, right? Because they use it every day, and it's like the internet itself, right? But it was a lot of work to build it. So my way of seeing those initiatives, they are making the big data promise ideal a reality, right? So, and this is very important. And many people have heard about these potential benefits, but they actually don't know how this actually works. So that would be a good way to put your foot into the door. Like, the salesman who put the foot in so the guy don't close the door. So I think that would be a good way to start a meeting or start a presentation like, hey guys, everybody heard about big data and how wonderful and marvelous this would be, right? So, but then OMOP and OHDSI offer a way to materialize that. It's not perfect, but hey, somebody has to begin this construction sometime, right?
Okay. Thank you so much.
I want to jump in what George said on big data. And to turn it back again to data management, information management. I think the term big data is rarely used within OHDSI with good reason. Anyone here using big data techniques, either in combination with observational data or in some other setting, or planning to use specific big data techniques in their setting? Or do we all stick with SQL databases?
Oh, you mean like going to a data lake or a graph database?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely, but, we're more of a commercial operation. So yeah, we are definitely looking at, and I've looked at and done some pilots with our data in a graph database. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of relational databases, but I'm more of a traditional, started out as a bench scientist and then did pharma drug development. So, yeah, I can do SQL and stuff, but I get tired of I get it, the relational databases. Until recently, you didn't have the horsepower to run graph databases. Now that you can, and you can metadata, use metadata on everything, a graph database, when you have a monstrous amount of data, makes a lot of sense. Think about it in the pharma perspective of, they used to develop drugs, you would get approved and that data would go off somewhere. Now, because of real world evidence, real world data, they want to mine, as do research folks, asking, here's a question, can we mine all the data in the world to kind of answer that question? It was just like a FAIR paper that just came out on long-term COVID. So, trying to do that in a relational database, I just can't ever get my head around it versus a graph database. But that's a personal opinion. I'm not a database person. I'm not a programmer. So, you know.
So just something else that we've done at Stanford, this is just coming back to this, somebody said something about data lakes. So what we're trying to do is, in the past, a lot of this clinical modalities, data of different clinical modalities has been really siloed. So one of our goals is actually to bring it all to one place. And we happen to have chosen Google Cloud as our cloud platform of choice right now. I mean, the ultimate goal is to be cloud agnostic, but we're not there yet. And so we actually have brought in all of our radiology imaging data also into Google Cloud, and we've built a de-identification pipeline for our radiology data too. And what we are trying to do is actually link. So we've been able so far to link bedside monitoring data. We're in the process of linking the radiology data, and all of this is actually linked to OMOP. So it's big data in the sense that when the goal is to be able to get to all clinical modalities, I mean, that's going to take a while, but in that sense, it is a data lake, and it will eventually, the metadata is linkable to the de-identified. So de-identified metadata from all these different clinical modalities is linkable to the de-identified OMOP, and this is available pre-IRB to our researchers.
So yeah, I mean, I could see in that instance, especially if you're talking about, I don't know how you define your radiology, whether that includes MRI and every kind of imaging.
Yes.
So yeah, those, I remember when I was in pharma, we had a company, we didn't even pull that stuff in because it was so monstrous.
It is monstrous.
So yeah, I could see again where, and this is a discussion that happens actually in the photographic and film world as well, around how you tag and find and deal with imaging stuff, instead of having a person sitting there all day typing in metadata, I mean.
Yeah, so what we've done is actually when we pull in the radiology images, we compress the images and at the same time pull in all the metadata as a JSON file. And then now we're in the process of actually just moving that JSON file into a BigQuery database.
So here's a thing, that I've run into since we're dealing with a lot of institutions. Is there a political thing around some people saying, I don't want all my stuff available to everybody because you're going to see my dirty laundry, or, whatever kind of attitudes?
I'm sorry, was that question for me?
Yeah, I mean, or for anybody, I mean, I've seen that dealing with institutions where, again, we're trying to break down silos, but oftentimes some part of the institute wants to be their own little, fiefdom.
Yes, so I'm not going to say that it hasn't been like pulling teeth. It has, and I'm making it sound like it's all rosy. Like, I mean, even one of the other things, like, OMOP is amazing. However, it no one size fits all, and it does not work for all kinds of research. It's really good for population level research, but most of our researchers traditionally have been working with cohorts with 200 patients, 300 patients. They're used to some clarity terminology. It's a big lift. So we've actually started this whole education program where we have tutorials and workshops to try to get people into interested to adopt OMOP, and it's a steep learning curve. I'm not going to deny it. It's not been a bed of roses, and it's slow going, but I think those who have moved realize the power that it has and the power it will give us 5 years from now, because the landscape and the world is changing.
Right, and I think, that's an important thing for those who may start into this and just go, I'm giving up hope. It does. You have to get a few people on board to be your subject matter experts and people to champion the cause. And again, it's a discussion we've been having around the CDISC thing. this common technical document or even getting CDISC off the ground. You know, I've been involved in that a long time, and it's just like, did you ever think it would get here? You know? So yeah.
I would say one thing about OMOP is that if you're just using it internally in your organization, it has value, it has utility, but I think where OMOP really shines is when you get into networks where you're sharing data with other organizations. And that's going to be the huge thing, because none of us has enough data to really do true research. But if we could share with Stanford, and if we can share with somebody else, all of us together sharing the same, data sets and having that commonality, that's where OMOP really shines. But you've got to get everybody used to those, to thinking that way.
Yeah, and I think that's the education thing where, the FDA and some of the regulatory agencies are trying with the real world evidence and real world data. I think, it just needs to continue to be championed slowly but surely. But you're absolutely right. As we've seen with COVID, that's where, if you can mine a bunch of EHRs, which again, that's all getting into EHRs. That's a whole nother topic. But, yeah, that's where this will work. And the only way it will work, because 200 people is not a big enough N for anything, unless it's a clinical trial. So.
And for those, those that are new and are still trying to sell in OMOP CDM, like there is going to be some challengers, right? So there's going to be the people that say, hey, like, you've converted this data to the OMOP CDM, and my counts don't match your counts for a specific cohort or a specific design, and that is because certain decisions have to be made. There's vocabulary standardization, and things of that nature. But retrospectively, you do get better. At least we have been seeing better quality results, right? We're more confident in the results of our analyses because we know that in some cases there's data quality and reviews and the like being done prior to that, which a lot of groups that aren't using the CDM, at least at Janssen, they're doing that data quality piece and scrubbing out some of that data during their study or after, they've done their initial analysis, whereas, we're doing some of it before by converting to the CDM. So there will be challengers, and, just you need to be prepared for that and ready for that. And it's not it's not necessarily combative, but it's, people aren't necessarily comfortable with it when it's a new thing.
So there's a question on the chat about, this topic of career development, right? So, professional development, what are the career opportunities for someone with an informatics degree versus a degree in data science or engineering? Like I mentioned back in the chat, for the folks that I have, most of our data management folks are on the data engineering degrees. Versus the informatics and data science degrees typically gear more towards the analytics, the actual data science side of it. We have both in our group, so that's typically the mix, but doesn't mean that you can't cross, right? Because I do have some folks who are on data engineering side who wants to learn more about data science, and now they've taken more of a role on the data science side. And vice versa, folks that have a data science degree, but then they're like, you know what, I find ETLing very interesting. So then they've moved over to the other side of the spectrum. So I've had both, but mainly a lot of our folks, there is a clear division between data management folks who are more into the data engineering degree versus the data science folks who are in the analytics degree. So hopefully that answers the question. Or if anyone else sees something different on their sides, because that's just, again, my team and the folks that I've interacted with.
Yeah, that was helpful. I'm curious for informatics. Is it kind of a overlap of engineering and data science, or is it more really on the data science side?
Most of the folks that apply for our positions, which I have a lot, so if you're interested, let me know. They are more on the data science side. They don't typically, I mean, I've seen some that comes on the data engineering side as well, but a lot of them also have used tools. So like, you know, actual ETLing tools, which I shy away from, at least within our group, because a lot of the stuff we do is not based around like one of the more really expensive too, like Sagent or Informatica and that stuff. I prefer the folks that can do SQL, folks that can do R, folks that can do Python, Scala, whatever the heck, right? That stuff, because you're always, in our group, you're always learning something new with the technology. Like, for example, we're now playing with Snowflake. So if you're just used to using a tool, you're less adaptive potentially, right, to the different type of tools that other folks use. Right. So we're more into the, because a lot of our engineers likes to play with new stuff, and that's what keeps them interested. We try, but it's not always available, right? So like some folks have mentioned BigQuery, some folks have mentioned AWS, some folks have mentioned, you know, Graph as the newest and greatest toy to play with. So that's what they call them, new toys. But again, to move to those, you kind of have to have a fundamental background, and being in the tool just doesn't help you with that fundamental background all the time. So at least that's, again, that's in my group. And we're a big, gigantic data company. So,
well, I'm a single person building our OMOP instance specifically for the All of Us program. We're going to expand it beyond that. But I'm currently doing it in SQL Server with SSIS, but we are moving to a Snowflake platform incrementally in stages. And I have been able to move my current process using SSIS
awesome.
and even Access to verify data, that sort of thing, to directly to the Snowflake database. And so the skills that I had from knowing SQL Server, the Snow SQL is very similar. It's ANSI standard,
Yes.
so it's very similar to SQL Server. There's not a lot of relearning. So if you have those tools, not tools in the sense that Mui was saying, but if you have that set of knowing how to do the things in directly in SQL,
Correct.
that can go from one platform to another platform very easily, which I found with Snowflake.
That's what I look for. Go ahead.
That's true even about BigQuery. BigQuery SQL is very, very similar to ANSI SQL. So that shift is very smooth, and it's so much faster.
And I'll say one thing I wanted to say about Snowflake is that it will handle JSON data natively, and you can bring it up and it looks like it's in a table. So you don't necessarily have to pull your JSON data into a table. It handles semi-structured data very, very nicely. And I'm not an expert on that. We haven't done a bunch of it, but I've seen what it can do, and that sounds very, very interesting for moving into the future. So
yeah, we're migrating all of our production stuff over to Snowflake this year, and our POC, from what I understand, didn't take it was very minimal code change to what we had, and it actually speeds up our entire process by like a ton, and it cost me a lot less. So those are all the awesome reasons why we're moving over. But we've done the POC and we've done one. So I have like 15 different data assets that are huge that we're planning on moving over like by the end of this year.
Yeah. But and in terms of professional development, I mean, I basically am just a SQL guy, database guy for the last 30 years. R, Python, what are those things? But those would be very, very helpful for me now, and even for the data science stuff, because I know very, very well how to put data into OMOP, and I can figure out the OMOP data for that. but I'm pretty clueless in terms of how to get data back out and how to use it. And if I knew that, I would be a lot better at getting data into the database because I'd know what the what the purpose of it is. And that's
Right.
where I'm missing that. And I'd encourage you, even if you're just going to be doing ETL, yeah, to get some data science and that sort of
So,
just a little bit so that you can understand it, even if you're not an expert in it.
so what do you mean, I guess, back to acronyms and terms, what do we mean here by data science? I mean, we're talking about people that understand life sciences and medical terminology. I mean, kind of things. I mean, I see your frustration there. Again, from the world I come from, I understand oncology really broadly. So I see that when I'm dealing with some of our data people, explaining what all the data means seems to have helped them better in their ability to program and understand. Yes, no opinions?
Well, from my standpoint, what I have trouble with is the hierarchies of the concepts of how do I want to put this? And actually using it statistically and what the data is used statistically for. I don't have any statistics background, and
Right.
and I think that would all be useful to me if I had more of that. Now I have to rely on other people, and sometimes that knowledge transfer doesn't happen as well as if I had more understanding of it.
So
Yeah.
what we do in our group is, because we operate in an agile Scrum methodology. So like this morning, we had all 4 groups do their demos all at right back to back to back to back. So 2 hours of demos that I have to attend. 2 of them are data scientists and 2 of them are data management. So what we encourage is everybody attends each other's so that they can see what the other teams are working on and ask those questions, like you said. Right? Why are you doing this? What is it that you're asking for? And actually get a better understanding of, oh, you want Japanese claims data. Why? Right? And how are you going to utilize it? And the other people can tell them why. And versus reverse going, okay, you want this, but what tables do you want? Because I can't get them all to you in the deadline that you want. So tell me exactly what order you want them in, right? So that they can look at each other. Now that's what we put out there. How realistic is it? Half of them don't show up for each other's demos. So it's really, like you said, that's what we do to keep the 2 groups entertained, but they may not always have the time or find that, it's not in my area. So it's not as interesting to me to show up for someone else's demo. So it's a hard balance, right? Like you said, Roger, you're willing to learn, you want to learn. So we have some of those, but then there are those who just don't want to cross that bridge. They just want to stay where they are. But we offer that opportunity. So that's something you may want to ask Roger, hey, can I join your, get a heads up on what the heck you guys are working on, or if you guys have a demo or like an overview, can I join just because? Right.
Yeah. We are, we're pulling up, anyway, never mind.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, we're like I said, I've been a one-man shop in this ETL, and we're pulling in, or we've hired another person to do that, but he has a data science background, and so he knows R and Python, so that now we're going to be working together, and he has less experience with ETL and relational databases. So I think that's going to be a very good working relationship where he can learn from me and I can learn from him. So that's another way to do it, I guess.
Cool. I am supposed to be the moderator, and I'm looking at time. We are 3 minutes over, but these have been wonderful conversations and very interesting ones as well. So thank you very much for joining this session. Hope you guys have a nice rest of your day. All righty. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Maxine.